Once upon a time, the lineup of the sedans of the three-pointed star mark was only limited to the likes of the S-Class and the E-Class. People looking for a more compact option didn't really have a choice. But then Mercedes-Benz released this car right here, a more budget-friendly, more compact-oriented car. This one right here is the 1992 Mercedes-Benz 190E 2.6, one of the biggest engines ever fitted to the 190E. Today I'm going to show you around this car and I'm also going to give it a test drive, so stay tuned. The styling of the 190E, it's unsurprisingly understated. Being the more budget-oriented car of Mercedes back then, it is also unsurprising that it is not as blingy and as flashy as the 124E classes, and most especially the S classes of its time. The hood on this one gets these two lines. You have a mono-blade wiper which also telescopes, and your grille just looks incredibly elegant, plus your three-pointed star hood emblem. The lights on this one for this Euro version car, it is just this plain looking light. At least you don't get this sealed beam that honestly looks kind of weird with the US version cars. But your bumper on this one as well, it is painted in this matte black trim, which makes it look quite elegant. On the side, the 190E styling remains very understated. The thing that will really pop out here is the character line that runs from the front of the car towards the rear, and that is pretty much your only highlight here. Your roofline, of course, it's still the older style, so it's not sloping anyway, always great for headroom. Then you have your asymmetrical wing mirrors, rectangular on the driver's side, but square on the passenger side. Other things I like here are these beautiful 15-inch rims, and the one thing that will definitely differentiate a W201 190E from a W124E class are these three vents by the C-pillar. If you notice too that this car comes in two-tone. So one thing worth noting here is that this two-tone part should not be gloss, and if it's original, it should be like this one, in satin. Towards the rear, overhang is only moderately short, and the bumpers on this one, they are also painted in the same black trim as the front 190E badge. And what differentiates this car from the rest of the 190E lineup is of course the 2.6 badge, denoting the engine displacement of this car. Ribbed taillights so that snow, dust, dirt, and grime won't get on it. Press this button and you open up a trunk which is incredibly square and just good with the corners, so you can really put a lot of things in here despite the actual size being a bit on the small side. Of course, you can't also fold down your rear seats with these older cars. Now, the party piece of this 190E 2.6 is undeniably the engine it has. So this one right here is the 2.6 liter M103.940 inline 6 gasoline engine, making 166 horsepower and 228 Newton meters of torque. Now this one right here is the exact same engine that you would get with a W124 260E and also the Meredes-Benz 260 SE W126 S class. So can you just imagine stuffing this huge engine inside this car that usually only gets an M102 inline 4 engine? This thing is probably a rocket. Here's the 190E 2.6. You check the door thud. Sounds pretty good and reassuring. And the interior of this cabin, it is very driver oriented, not much toys in here. So the steering wheel, yes, it is rather large and also leather wrapped. Behind it is your cruise control stock, and just below that is your combination switch for your high beam and also your monoblade wiper. The instrument cluster is really easy to read and it is quite basic. Then the seats, they are really comfortable wrapped in this cloth, and there are plenty of adjustments for it. The cloth is also reflected on your door cards, and then your dashboard, it is just a regular dashboard. There is a thin leather covering on it, and you also get these burl walnut trims all over. The center of everything, not even a climate control, instead you just have these rather rudimentary knobs, but it does get the job done. Then here towards your shifter, it goes down all the way to 2. You get these window switches, 4 power windows on this one. Actually pretty nice because only the top trims of the 190Es usually had those. They were usually options. Then this knob in the center, that only adjusts your passenger side mirror because that's the only one you can't reach, and you can manually adjust your driver's side mirror over here by yourself. Up top, there is the signage for your fasten seatbelt, and it is very reminiscent of what you would get with airplanes. You got this really nice armrest towards the center. There's actually an option, and not all 190Es got it. And what differentiates the 190E, the W201s from the E-Class W124s is that you also get your center handbrake. Here inside the second row, check the door thud. It sounds even better than front. Now, despite this car being rather small on the outside, for its size, interior space is actually not bad. My legroom is pretty good, so is my headroom, but you do have to take note that I am rather fun-sized at only 5'6". If you're probably on the taller side and seated behind yourself, you will kind of struggle in this car. Now, this one right here, this 190E 2.6, actually gets some options which, well, are optional in the other 190E. So, for example, I do get my rear headrest, and I also have my own center armrest here at the back. Towards the side, the burl walnut trim does continue, as well as the cloth, and of course the switch for your power windows. Should you want to seat 3 people in this car, you can kind of do it because since the seats are rather soft, they do sink down, giving you ample amount of headroom. However, width-wise, it's not exactly the widest, so this one is still just best reserved for 2 people. So driving the 1992 Meredes-Benz 190E 2.6. A while back, I did drive the 190E 2.316 Cosworth, and since that car is a homologation of more like a race car, this one expectedly rides a lot smoother, it's a lot more subdued, it's a lot more comfortable. The suspension in this one, it doesn't really crash or any way, it doesn't really like jar you in any way, it simply is a much relaxed ride. If you try driving around an E-Class, a W201, well, the ride-wise, they're actually roughly the same, although this is just a tad bit firmer than that. But the trade-off for that, of course, is that it really does corner and handle a lot better. Usually, these older cars are not exactly great when it comes to controlling body roll, but at least in the case of the 190E and how it really became a baby Benz, it really changed the stigma that Mercedes-Benz cars are only for old people. Power-wise, since you do have 166 horsepower, it is also a little bit down on the Cosworth, but it is just so much smoother because it is an inline 6. Those extra 2 cylinders really provide you a more sense of smoothness as you accelerate this car. The transmission though, yeah, as with these older Mercs, if you don't get the manual, they are quite lazy, so you really gotta hit that kick down feature for it to really shift down and accelerate hard. Once you are going though, the 190E 2.6 really proves to be an incredibly smooth cruiser. Even for today's standards, this car simply is a nice riding car. Over these speed bumps right here, it's so smooth. The rear doesn't crash either. Steering is sufficiently tight and it is actually quite weighted, which is something that you no longer get with modern Mercs. They seem to be incredibly over-assisted, but this one really gives you a sense of driving pleasure as you drive it. Obviously, it is not as tight as what you would get with a 3 Series. However, it still is as good as it can get for most Mercedes-Benzes. Now trying to do something like a moose test, and it really controls body roll really well, and as you accelerate out of it, it sounds glorious. There's really something about these inline 6s. They do sound like turbines. They don't sound as turbine-like as what you would get with the M104 dual overhead cam versions, but this one too, it sounds pretty good. Noise insulation surprisingly is also pretty good because this particular example right here has had like pretty much a new weather strip, so this one right here feels as if it just rolled off the showroom. And just driving this, even if you're going on more higher speeds, I would say, it still is rather serene and quiet in here. Let's say you compare it again to a W124 E-Class, it is surprisingly about the same. So I would really expect that when you do take this car over to the highway and over long journeys, that you would still feel very happy. Another thing I really love about these older cars is the fact that your visibility is simply amazing. All around on the side and even towards the back, you see a lot out of it because of the fact that you still don't get curtain airbags, which would really eat into the sizes of your pillars. That 3-pointed star on the hood as well really does guide you, and despite this being a baby Benz, it still lets you know that you are driving a Mercedes-Benz. Overall, the 190E 2.6, yes, it may not be as rare and as desirable as a 190E 2.316 Cosworth. However, it really does have its own merits. If you're looking for a 190E in the best spec that you want to be able to drive comfortably in every single day, in case you're looking for your first old Merc and you want something that you can actually daily drive, I know a lot of people who actually do that, then the 190E 2.6 is a prime choice for when you are considering that. Additionally, a 190E does give you less of a headache when it comes to maintenance compared to when you want to get an E-Class or an S-Class, so this is also a great entry into the world of classic Mercedes-Benz.